I started the tech company simply to make money, and ironically, it lost me the most amount of money.
Two blokes from Queensland have made millions in just 2 years, all with their simple liquid gold formula that's got people hooked.
We learned very quickly that we're good at sales and marketing, and we're not in the manufacturing game. We tried to get into Woolies for probably 3 or 4 years, and then it wasn't until 18 months ago the category manager just reached out through our contact form on our website to read that coffee's got turmeric and ginseng and all these other things. Like, is that going to taste like absolute rubbish?
What do you think is one of the biggest business myths that exists?
People get into it to have more freedom, and that is right in a sense, but over a very long time horizon.
If you could go back and do anything differently, is there anything that kind of stands out that you're like, I'd do that differently?
I think
Jaryd, welcome to Top of Mind. I'm really looking forward to this chat because I have obviously been around Before You Speak for a really long time. I've known you for a while. And for those people that don't know, Before You Speak is a performance coffee brand which has ingredients like turmeric, MCT oil. I always am careful of the M and the C and the T in the order in which they go in. Ginseng. And you launched Before You Speak in 2017 after the idea came to you in 2016.
Yeah, probably around then. Where
How did it begin?
it was one of those things I used to, and still do, have a lot of business ideas.
Yeah.
My business partner and I had both previously worked in, I guess, sports nutrition and that kind of realm in the health and fitness industry. Both drank a lot of coffee. I was doing personal training at the time, so 4 a.m. starts, shitty instant coffee. But there's got to be an opportunity here, so kind of ran with it, and it seems to be working.
Now, look, turmeric is quite an acquired taste, right? It's not something that a lot of people jump at in terms of flavour profile.
Definitely.
Why turmeric as one of your main ingredients in the coffee?
So big one is for the anti-inflammatory properties that come with it. So good thing is you can't actually taste it in the coffee. So we've been able to kind of formulate all of those ingredients into their at effective dosages and still have the coffee taste really good.
I love that. Now, how did the idea come up? Because you and Ash put your heads together, but how did, like, obviously you were working in the fitness industry, you had an idea for making kind of a superfood coffee, but where did you start when it came to actually developing that idea and then coming to market with a product?
Yeah, I guess in the early days, like I mentioned, we both drank a lot of coffee at the time, and we both had prior years' experience working in sports nutrition space. So we're quite familiar with a lot of the ingredients. So we're already mixing things like MCT oil and stuff into our coffee.
Sure.
I guess the only really ones doing it at the time were Dave Asprey, who's, I guess, the father of biohacking, and Bulletproof Coffee over in the United States. We saw an opportunity to go, I guess, deeper than just putting the healthy fats into the coffee. So we looked at what other synergistic ingredients were there that would make sense to kind of put into a formulation. And I guess that's where we started with the first one. We now have, I guess, quite a range of different formulas.
So good. Now, I am going through this process at the moment with Spicy Boy, which is our crispy chili oil business, which you're familiar with.
Regularly.
Yeah, familiar. Finding a manufacturer for a product is really difficult. Like, it's such an intensive process. Everybody that I've spoken to when it goes, down to product development and then going through the manufacturing process, we had Sophie Hood, who's the founder of Soltonic, on, and she was talking about going over to South Korea to find a manufacturer. Where did you start when it came to actually identifying who you wanted to partner with when it came to manufacturing the product?
We were probably in a very fortunate position, like I mentioned. Like, we had industry experience and industry connections. Sure. So we already knew people that were doing manufacturing and contract manufacturing for some of the other big brands that are out there in the Australian market. So we're pretty lucky in a sense where we're able to reach out, and the first person that we've started working with has been the guy that we've worked with for, I guess, our entire journey so far on, I guess, the specific, coffee blends. As new products come into market, we'll kind of diversify and open up different channels. But our ready-to-drink range, like the cold brew coffees, for example, that's been a completely different challenge.
Yeah.
So we're now probably 5 years into trying to get these right.
Yeah.
Now, we're getting very close. We've finally found a manufacturing partner, but that part of the journey has been, I guess, a lot more difficult than, say, where we started.
I think that's something that people grossly underestimate. They're like, yeah, just come up with a product. And it's like, it's all well and good having that product on kind of, minimum order, quantities or, small batches. But when you're starting to produce this at scale, finding someone that can actually deliver that for you is half the battle. And as you said, with your RTDs, it's taken you guys almost 5 years to come up with that.
Yeah. And when we had a crack at doing it ourselves, and that was probably about a $200,000 mistake. So we learned very quickly that we're good at sales and marketing and we're not in the manufacturing game.
Yeah.
I think getting started, finding the right partner, like you said, it's like you need to find someone pending the size of your business that can kind of cater for MOQs and stuff, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of cash tied up.
Yeah.
We probably didn't do it the smart way. I think we ordered 10,000 boxes to start with. So it was kind of a $250,000 outlay, call it, off the get-go. And it probably took us 11 months to sell through that. So still not a bad timeline, but it definitely didn't move as quick as we would have liked. We were ambitious.
Sure. Hey, just a quick one. If you are loving this episode, help us grow and reach more people by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a review. And you mentioned $200,000 as an expensive mistake. Would you say that's your most expensive mistake that you've made in business? Okay.
That's one of
Let's
many.
talk about what's your most expensive business mistake?
So I had a company that I shut down probably mid last year. So in the software space, we created a mobile self-checkout product. After probably 3 years of development, anyone that's worked in this space knows the cost of software developers. So we probably poured about 1.5 mil into that. Couldn't quite get product market fit and get it off the ground, which is a little bit early. So pulled the pin on that. It was either raise more capital and keep pushing or put a pin in it. So we decided to pull up stumps and yes, it's 1.5 in the hole.
And when it comes to this, I actually had Jade Spooner on the podcast recently, and she was talking about kind of exiting businesses and, coming to terms with the idea of exiting a business. I know you and I have spoken at length around an exit strategy when it comes to kind of having a business and what that long-term goal is for you. But was there a particular moment when you came to decide that it wasn't worth it, other than the money that you'd outlaid? But was there a particular moment that you're like, this is the right time to pull the pin?
Yeah, well, to be honest, we're running out of money.
Okay, so that's important. Yep.
We funded the initial part ourselves, myself and my business partner.
Yep.
We then went and raised $1 million in funding, and we're kind of getting to the end of that runway.
Yep.
And looking at where the market was at the time, it was consumer spending was set to tighten still.
Sure.
Conversations we're having with retailers would get a lot of interest from, I guess, everyone in the sales and marketing arms of the business. But as soon as we got to the CFO, we just get blocked. The deals wouldn't get through.
Yeah.
So I was either raise more capital, and my position was if I wouldn't put more of my own money into this right now, I'm not going to ask investors who are in the early rounds. A lot of the time it's kind of people that you've got relationships with already. So it wasn't venture funding.
Yeah.
So it's losing their dollars is like losing your own money.
Sure.
So the decision was kind of, we don't think this was going to change in the next 12 months. So there's probably not much point to just burning through more cash.
Fair enough. And so with Before You Speak, did you guys have investment early on, or did you bootstrap a lot of that?
So we bought another partner, and we had who loaned us the capital to get off the ground.
Yeah. And the process of getting, obviously, okay, you've got the product, you've manufactured it. When it came to actually marketing it and selling it, what was your first step in terms of getting it into people's hands? How did you do it?
We were in a pretty fortunate position. I had a lot of experience, I guess, through prior business in the personal training space. We had a bunch of connections, I guess, in the fitness influencer world. So that was probably a natural place for us to start, along with having worked within Australian sports nutrition. And Ash had been with those guys for maybe 8 years or something.
Sure.
So we had a lot of people in our network that we could lean on. So that's kind of where we started. We wanted to be an e-commerce only brand to begin with. And we launched through those channels. probably had 30 odd influencers posting for us upon launch, which amounted to about 14 sales.
Yeah.
Not really where we thought we'd land.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was kind of
I also feel like when you guys launched, which was what, 8 years ago?
just about tick over 7.
7 years ago. Like when you guys launched, I feel like that was like the prime fitness influencer kind of, I suppose, moment. Like that's when everybody was like relying on influencers, specifically fitness influencers, to promote their product. Did you see much of a return? I know you said you saw like 17 sales. And I think it's funny because we've spoken about it a lot in terms of, you know, it's one thing having someone promote your brand that's well known in the health and fitness space. It's another thing having that person actually make conversions when it comes to selling or influencing a product decision. So when you invested in these influencers, was there capital that you invested in with them, or was it just a contra exchange so you didn't kind of lose out too much?
Yeah, not to start with. So to start with was really just leveraging people in our network.
Sure.
So really it was just product for contra deal. I guess as we've grown through the years, like there definitely has been a lot of, I guess, having different structures around working with ambassadors and influencers and paying specific ones. But 100% is finding the people that have the communities where you get the biggest ROI.
Yeah. And engaged communities, right? Like, because I think
100%.
There's one thing to have 500,000 followers, but if those 500,000 followers don't buy off the back of what you share, then it's kind of wasted.
100%. And I think community is built around delivering value. So if you're not really delivering value to a community and you're building it off whether it might be entertainment rather than education or something, people that educate their audiences we find have the most trust with their audience and they have the most influence. So,
and how do you track that now in terms of working with fitness influencers and things like that?
So we probably have tiers, I would say. So at the top, you'll look at having brand ambassadors who are just a great representation of the brand and what it means to align with your values and stuff. And that's kind of just more of a reach thing. In the mid-level, it's probably having more around those transactional relationships. That is, who are the right people not only to represent the brand, but they've got the communities as well. So it's like they're the ones that are going to scream and shout about your product. It's like that's where you do see a lot of ROI. And that may be around, I guess, having affiliate type setups or it may be simply monthly kind of you're paying to post kind of thing. And then the lower level is like still doing a lot of contra, a lot of UGC stuff and just making sure it's just more eyeballs on the brand.
Sure. And before we kind of move on from kind of the social influencer space, with selecting the right ambassadors, it's one thing for that ambassador to kind of fit the role of whoever you're wanting to attract or whatever, but do you have a process in terms of identifying who you want to work with or not really?
I think when you spend enough time in the space, you start to identify who's genuine with their content. And also, I guess, as a brand, we like to, I guess a lot of our stuff is around performance. So it's like, who's out there really having a crack or doing something kind of above and beyond. So that's definitely a part of how we look at engaging and working with people.
And you just had a really exciting partner announcement, which was like literally a day ago, yesterday?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Tell me more about it.
So just signed on Jack Doohan, who's a reserve driver for Alpine F1 team.
Yeah.
Ash and I are both massive F1 fans.
Same.
So I guess as a brand owner, this is like the most exciting thing we could be doing. And Jack's a legend too. Like we've spent quite a bit of time with him now.
Yeah.
So bringing him on board, like the chance that there's probably likely he's the front runner to get a seat to be starting on the grid next year. Like, that's super exciting for us. So that kind of broadens the scope, especially when we're starting to open up and go into new markets as well. So we'll launch into the UAE in the coming months and Saudi, who are both massive markets for the F1 and looking to relaunch the US as well. So again, massive F1 market. So it's exciting.
And when it came to picking him specifically, did you just go like, who would we be best at like secure? Like how did you go about it? Because it's like, it's one thing to look at somebody that's quite aspirational and go, fuck, it would be great if they worked with us, wouldn't it? But then how do you go about actually locking it in or following through with locking that person in?
For sure. I think like I guess it begins with keeping an eye on the market and what you're interested in.
Sure.
So we're quite across, I guess, what's happening in the young drivers and up and coming, like the Australian kind of space. We've worked with a few other motorsport drivers in Australia as well. But I guess seeing Jack being the next young Aussie F1 driver to potentially get on the grid, like that's exciting for our brand. It's exciting for him. And there's a lot of alignment in what we're doing and kind of our direction. So we reached out to him and we were fortunate. We've worked with some of his mates as well in the past. So that probably definitely helped the conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
We were lucky he loved the brand. We jumped on a call, connected, and we're pretty stoked with where we landed.
Wow, that's so cool. Now, there was an article that I stumbled across, which the quote in the article or the headline that says, 2 blokes from Queensland have made millions in just 2 years, all with their simple liquid gold formula that's got people hooked. Was making millions what you expected it to be?
You can probably tell that by that reaction. The answer is no. I think, I don't know, news headlines, they're there to grab attention.
Absolutely.
Making millions in a business does not mean there's millions in your bank or in your pocket.
Doesn't mean you're a millionaire.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. Maybe on paper.
Yeah.
But that, especially the early days, I was like, it's a long road before you start seeing any good kind of profits in a business.
Totally. And when you kind of got to that mark where you'd made millions on paper, what did you then realize in terms of like the longevity of the brand and like what you were going to have to do to get it to where, because I think, you know, when I spoke to Josh from Revel, he said, you know, we had 5 locations and we'd hit the milestone that we wanted to hit, and we were like, we only need like 10 locations and we'll be set, we'll be able to step away from the business and we'll be good for life. But then he slowly realized as he got closer to 10 locations, he was like, we're going to need more like 50 locations, right? So like what was that moment like for you guys when, you know, you were obviously bringing in the revenue, you were making sales, people knew about the product, but what was that kind of point of realization that you were like, God, it's actually going to be a lot longer of a journey than we first anticipated?
For sure. I was like, I picked the wrong business model.
Cash out.
Inventory-based businesses are capital intensive.
Yeah.
So a lot of dollars just constantly need to be reinvested because the more you grow, the more stock that you need to be holding. So I guess my thought was, and being a young man, I was like, you probably get money hungry as well, and impatient. So they're, I guess, 2 things that I've had to develop over the year. But where we started was probably realizing that, hey, this is going to be a much longer journey. And again, like I went off and started other businesses and stuff in this time. And that was understanding business models as well. As like, well, inventory-based businesses are hard. It's just like you need to be in the game for a longer time until you can get to a stage where you're maybe taking dividends or your revenues are at a stage or you might be looking for an exit or something. I started the tech company simply to make money, and ironically, it lost me the most amount of money. So doing things for the wrong reason. But
there's a life lesson in that.
I think now it's like, I look at business models as like, is this a vehicle that can get me to the outcome? If yes, well, then you just need to go through the process and be patient. So it's like BYS will 100% get there and we're well on our way.
Yeah.
But I'm signed up for the next 5 to 7 years.
And then what happens after 5 to 7 years?
Who knows? We'll either be, hopefully, making a whole lot of money. It's like the business is in a different position where you can either step back and continue to just let it grow and run, put other people in there, and you may be in a position where you're taking good dividends out of it. Or it's like you may have offers for other companies to get acquired. And if it makes sense at that point in your life, maybe that's something you consider.
Yeah. Love it. Now, I remember when you launched your product, I loved the product from the moment that I tried it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with you and you're sitting here. You didn't pay me to say that, just to be really clear. You really took a unique approach with your packaging and the messaging on your packaging, which I loved. And it was the thing that honestly caught my attention initially. Now, the packaging on the box or the messaging on the box says, in our industry, there are rules about what we can and can't say on this package. So we won't tell you that our coffee contains kick-ass ingredients to boost your mental performance. We also won't tell you that our coffee will make you feel fucking great because of the mood-elevating properties. What and why was it important for you guys to be so different when it came to your packaging?
I think especially starting any brand, like you need to be able to do something that's going to grab people's attention and stand out. For us, it was kind of being a little bit tongue-in-cheek. We did have Queensland Health come and slap us on the wrist, and so we've had to change a bunch of stuff in that time. But it was like, in the early days, you don't have enough eyeballs on you. So I was like, if you can make enough noise doing things within your marketing, and maybe if that's making some claims that you shouldn't, like just go for it. Like again, you'll get a warning before you get in too much trouble. So now we need to be a lot more careful around how we talk about our products and ingredients and benefits and all that kind of stuff. But I guess in the early days, you just do what you can.
I think that's one thing that people also don't consider with a product-based business, right, is like the various standards, regulations, you know, messaging guidelines that you have to kind of adhere to as your business grows. Is there one kind of key thing that stands out to you that you were like, oh, yeah, like that was probably a big lesson for us?
Like it's difficult, right? Like as long as you're not doing any of the obvious things, like making sure that the ingredients that you're putting into there are at regulatory dosages and stuff. But it's an ever-changing environment as well. So say we had our adrenal coffee that we had in market. As of last year, they then made ashwagandha a novel food, which means it can no longer be in food and beverage products. Still is in a lot of them, but that's probably just because TGA or FSANZ, the regulatory body in Australia and New Zealand, hasn't really caught on to everyone. So you only really get in trouble a lot of the time if people are then going and dobbing on you, saying, hey, these guys have got this in their product. So again, Queensland Health knocked in our door again, and we had to stop running that product. It's an ongoing process, and like again, the landscape changes. So something that may be an approved ingredient one year may not be the next year. So
how do you manage that with inventory? Like in terms of the amount of stock that you have that you now can't sell because that has the particular ingredient in it?
Most of the time they'll be fairly good and allow you to kind of move through within a certain time period what you've currently got. But we've always been very efficient with our, I guess, inventory planning and stock turn as well. So we never sit on too much in our warehouse. We kind of know what our forecasts are going to look like, and you're only ordering and sitting on it for a handful of weeks, and then it's back out the door because that's all cash flow.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. If you loved this conversation, don't forget to tune in to our next episode to hear part 2. Don't forget to review and subscribe if you are loving this content.